And on the main stage, I would like to give a warm welcome to our host for the day, Nick Dixon from Ubisoft UK, who you all should know. Welcome back, Nick. And Imre Yeli from Atypical Games, who's been an amazing designer in residence for us this year. We'll kick off today's event with Nick and Imre holding our opening fireside chat with our industry legend, Sir Ian Livingstone. And just to give you some background, Nick is a games industry veteran with over 20 years experience in creative direction, game design, narrative direction, narrative design and screenwriting. That's quite a packed resume there, Nick. And Nick's goals are to align passion and strategic vision to develop innovative games and compelling narratives that challenge audiences and create lasting experiences. He's been responsible for game design creative direction for 12 published titles on all major platforms and narrative direction, design and screenwriting on 4 published game screenplays on all major platforms. Previous roles that Nick's held include with Software Creations, Acclaim Entertainment, Blitz Game Studios, Frontier and Supermassive Games, as well as leading incubation and teaching at Falmouth. Nick's currently responsible for narrative vision at Ubisoft Leamington and Ubisoft Reflections. Okay, so welcome, Nick. And Imre Yeli is currently designer in residence at Atypical Types, Bossa Studios. He's a lifelong gamer and game creator. Imre is an expert in creativity, prototyping, interactive storytelling, game design and creative production. Passionate about collaboration across various media and art forms and engaging audiences in novel ways. He's co-founder and was Chief Creative Officer of Bossa Studios, winner of multiple BAFTA and other awards, creator of Surgeon Simulator and I Am Bread. He also led the development of multiple innovative interactive narrative games, including Orwell's Animal Farm. Okay, so welcome, Imre. So guys, I think you're now doing the conversation with Sir Ian Livingstone online. So do you want to introduce Sir Ian Livingstone?
There he is. There he is. Good morning, Sir Ian. How are you?
Good morning. Please call me Ian. That's fine, honestly.
Amazing to see you. For everyone in the audience, Sir Ian Livingstone, CBE, is a veteran in the truest sense of the word of the games industry. Co-founded Games Workshop in 1975, launching Dungeons & Dragons in Europe and Warhammer. In 1982, co-authored The Warlock of Firetop Mountain, the first fighting fantasy gamebook in the series, which has gone on to sell 20 million copies worldwide. Moved into video games in the early 90s when, serving as the executive chairman of Eidos PLC, launched Lara Croft Tomb Raider, Hitman and Deus Ex. His angel investments in video game studios include Unicorns Playdemic, Golf Clash and Mediatonic, Fall Guys, and he's a leading advocate for computing in schools to promote creativity, computational thinking and problem solving. With a focus on digital creativity, the Livingstone Academy, Bournemouth, opened in 2021 in association with Aspirations Academies Trust, and its directorships include Non-Executive Director, National Citizen Service, Non-Executive Director, Aspirations Academies Trust, and a variety of others. I realized that I needed your bio, not because I know you quite well, but because you've done so much, I couldn't possibly remember it all, which is a hell of a place. But welcome, Sir Ian, to the Games Expo as our first guest today. Oh, I can't hear him. We can't hear you, was it? No, still can't hear him.
Oh, the beauty of the live show.
How's your sign language, Ian? Excellent.
Or for the medium of dance, Ian, if you're ready.
Yes, we're going to check mine now. I seem to recall, Ian, that the last time we were at Falmouth, we also struggled to get you online, so...
But it was okay.
Oh, there we go. I can now hear you. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Obviously, you know Imre very well.
Cool.
So, having now seen Dungeons and Dragons in its kind of 5th edition all these years later. Did you have any kind of notion when you were first doing the European version of this, the kind of impact that would have? Was there any awareness of how big that, that had the potential to be?
Well, I understood the appeal of the game. Clearly, role-playing as characters in medieval worlds had great appeal, but I had no idea it would become a mass-market proposition because it involved quite a lot of effort on behalf of the dungeon master, or games master, whatever you like to call that person, to create a labyrinth of rooms and passageways and populate them with monsters and treasure, and require 4 or 5 people committed to long playing sessions which could last literally years. So I always thought it was more of a hobby game than a mass market game, but it's incredible how it's breached the mass market phenomenon. I think obviously in recent times it's been helped by Stranger Things and the YouTube hit series Critical Role, and had a certain sort of appeal to people who, and because of cosplay and because of general games being accepted as a genuine entertainment medium in itself, that D&D and role-playing and board games and all video games has become mass market.
And certainly in terms of Critical Role, I mean, that now has such a viewing audience over quite a long stretch each week. It's like 4 hours each week, that most video games companies would be kind of envious of that much attention, I would think. We've talked about this a number of times, but I think our audience is less familiar. What was the first steps into that kind of gaming world, and how did that come about for you? What was the kind of process from the beginning, I guess?
Well, you have to go back to, I guess, in the late 60s, when I used to enjoy playing kind of family games that were available at the time, Monopoly and Scrabble and Cluedo, but I found them all a little bit boring. I used to enjoy playing chess. And then I discovered strategy games that were published in the States, Avalon Hill Games, War Games, and thought, wow, this is amazing. A game where you not just rely on the roll of a dice to win, that you can actually execute some sort of strategy and planning and tactics to be able to beat your opponent. But Workshop didn't start, Dungeons and Dragons thing didn't start until we actually moved to London. I moved to London in the early 70s and shared a flat with 2 old school friends, Steve Jackson and John Peake. We were all, had pretty boring jobs and they were also badly paid, so we used to stay in at night and play board games, and we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow turn our passion of playing games into some sort of community, games-related business. So we thought, yeah, well, let's do that. So we decided to publish a newsletter, kind of 4-page instant print thing, fanzine called Owl and Weasel. And we also started making wooden games, because John was a craftsman. He was a skilled craftsman, but his actual job was a civil engineer. So he'd make warrior boards and go boards and backgammon boards. I'd go out and sell them to game shops, and Steve would do the admin and administration. But we didn't really love that, but it just got us going on a kind of very amateurish level. And we published Owl and Weasel and sent it out to everybody who was doing games. And one of the recipients was Gary Gygax, who lived in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And we hadn't sent to him directly, but he wrote to us and said, love your little fanzine. Really nice review of the game I've just published in the US. And it didn't look very much. It was a kind of plain box with a very amateurish illustration of a fancy combat scene on the front. But when you open the box, it opened up your imagination like none had ever done before, and I don't think any game ever will again. I mean, it had such an impact on the gaming world that it's impossible to ignore its impact. This, of course, was Dungeons and Dragons. So we played it. Steve and I became immediately obsessed. We saw how much money we had in the world, and we were able to order 6 copies. We wrote to Gygax and said, we'd like to order 6 copies. On the back of that huge order, he gave us an exclusive 3-year distribution agreement for the whole of Europe, because he was also operating out of flat in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. So we were both effectively role-playing businessmen about a role-playing game, and that's how we became the European distributors of Dungeons and Dragons, and this was in early 1975.
Oh, well, Imra did show me a photo of you last night that is the epitome of 1970s chic, with the glasses and the beard, and so clearly, you know, you epitomise, I think, that generation. Imra, question from you?
So I was introduced to the first edition Dungeons and Dragons. I think it was very late 80s or maybe very early 90s, and I got immediately hooked on. But for me, video gaming kind of existed at the same time. So, but how was it for you? Like, was it an obvious choice to get involved, or was it something that you had to be convinced about, or like was it just a side gig and it got big, or did you know that this is going to be the next big thing?
We were selling computer games in our Games Workshop shops, and we also published a range of games for Commodore Spectrum, for Commodore 64 and the Sinclair Spectrum. Very simple games indeed. And we could see that this was also a phenomenon about to happen. This was very early 80s. But there was also the time where there's also a glut of those early cartridge games, the legendary burying of the ET cartridges in the desert. So we were kind of nervous about getting into big time, because at the same time, Workshop was doing well with Dungeons and Dragons, and then Warhammer, and we were opening shops, and White Dwarf magazine was going well, and City of Miniatures was going well. So we didn't want to kind of switch, particularly into video games, even though we were kind of dipping our toe in the water with publishing and also stocking some. I mean, of course, we also had some overstocks in our own shop, so we were quite nervous about the industry, because it was very much a very young industry at that time. It was difficult to understand. Of course, the risk, of course, was huge, because it was all physical inventory. So how I got into it is that I've been writing Fighting Fantasy game books since 1982. They were flying, branching narrative with the game system attached, published by Penguin Books under their Puffin label. And at the time I had like number 1, 2, and 3 in the bestsellers charts. Death Trap Dungeon, I think was in 1984, was being number 1 for most of the year. And I was approached by 2 guys from a startup video games company called Domark. That was Dominic Weekley and Mark Strawn, and they came to me at Workshop and said, would I design their launch product, because they were starting a new games development company, and that company was called Domark, and the game was called Eureka, and we had it programmed in Hungary for secrecy, because with their marketing background they wanted to offer a £25,000 prize for the first person to solve the mystery of Eureka. And again, this was for Commodore 64 and Sinclair Spectrum. And rather than me taking royalties, I took equity in Domark and invested a little bit more money at the time, because I wanted to have like a bet in the face, so to speak. And fast forward, I mean, Eureka came out, Domark thrived, and when I sold out of Games Workshop in 1991, I invested more money from some of the proceeds I had from the sale of Workshop into Domark, joined the board as vice chairman, and probably just about the worst time possible is when the 16-bit mark was about to fall off the edge of a cliff, and realized that the company was really undercapitalized. So we decided to put 4 companies together. We met the CEO of IDOS Technologies, it was a video compression company, and we found 2 other, Simis and Big Red, to put 4 companies together to create Newco IDOS Interactive, which we floated on the London Stock Exchange in 1995, and I became executive chairman. And of course, the big event happened for IDOS when we acquired Centre Gold the following year. With Centre Gold came Core Design, of course. With Core Design came our Plot 2 Made, which we published in October '96, and the rest, as I say, is history.
I feel like something which has to be put into perspective here. And again, like we know each other for many years, and I'm not just saying this to be polite, but like any single one of the things that you've done is enough for a lifetime of success, right? And recognition. Just to choose your own adventure books. If you did nothing else but that, it would be, how do you find that on a personal level to balance that? Because obviously, like Warhammer, and then choosing to offload some of these responsibilities or sell on a company or step back from it, it must have been a really tough choice on a personal level because you build these amazing successes and being like stepping back from something at that height, which again, for any other person, it would be a lifetime of achievement. Like, how did you find it on a personal level?
Well, I wanted to do everything. I still want to do everything. I'm never going to retire. I enjoy the industry and the people in it too much to ever walk away from it. But I like new challenges, and Workshop was flying in the 80s, but also Fighting Fantasy game books were flying. We were going on world tours in Japan and Australia and the United States. Literally, we were being mobbed wherever we went because branching narrative at that time was a new phenomenon. We actually created a genre with the branching narrative with a game system attached with Fighting Fantasy. And that was effectively kind of video game in analog format, and the choices were like analog hypertext. So we'd have put a simple game system to make the choices that much more dramatic. So you have to roll dice to fight the monsters rather than just make a simple choice every now and then. So that was became a huge phenomenon because it was empowering children to make choices. And that agency was very compelling. So they talk about their experiences reading the book in the first person. And that was amazing to see how people responded to the books and to us when we went on these tours. So Penguin Books wanted more and more of these. We were running Games Workshop during the day and having to write books at night, and you can only do so much for so long. They managed to do that for 2 or 3 years, but it was kind of social life of a slug at that time, and my girlfriends didn't last for very long as they gave up on this person who was never available, and it had to come to a point, a crunch time, that even though we were young at that time, it wasn't sustainable. So we appointed Brian Ansel as managing director of Games Workshop because he was already running Citadel Miniatures, and he was an incredible operator with a great plan and a focus to make Workshop kind of totally based on its own intellectual property and no longer distribute effectively competing products. So the whole of Workshop evolved into own IP with Warhammer, White Dwarf, Citadel Miniatures, 40K, and all the published games were all original content and own intellectual property, and that's how they're able to build value and remain independent and succeed. So we became non-execs of Workshop in the mid-80s. They stayed on the board till 1991, until there was a management buyout, and when all 4 of us sold out to an MBO, and then Workshop floated 2 years later. And some people might say we sold out a little early because it's now worth £3 billion on the London Stock Exchange. Extraordinary success. So we stand by proud parents from the side watching its success, and long may it continue. In fact, I've just written a book which is coming out in September, the first 10 years of Games Workshop. It's called The Dice Man, and you can get it from, you can pledge through unbound.com how to get a copy. And it's it's telling all the kind of ups and downs of the early days of Workshop, and it's got like 250 photos, many of which haven't been seen before, about when I used to have hair.
Well, it's interesting to think about the legacy you've created and the ripple effects from everything you've done. I was sat down with some friends on Monday playing the new Soulsborne role-playing game, which of course is part of the the Games Workshop legacy, and therefore directly ties back to one of those ripples. And then occasionally you and I will bump into each other at the UK Games Expo, and you look at the size of that, how it now occupies 2 or 3 halls at at the Birmingham Centre. It just, it's amazing really to see those ripples. I'd like to kind of talk about, the IDOS SCI kind of arrangement and how you now reflect on the really big deals we're seeing being made in terms of acquisition. But I'd like to come back to, even though you've never stepped out of the arena of the interactive fantasy fiction and the choose your own adventure, how does it feel to come almost full circle back to now be writing this again as published titles? How does it kind of feel to step back into that?
Well, I never left. I mean, I enjoy all aspects of games. It's not a question of either or. I think each component part is additive to the opportunity and additive to the fun. I mean, I'm surrounded here in my room here with 1,500 board games, and I'm still an avid board games player. That doesn't mean to say I don't play video games. Of course, I play video games and mobile games, and games doesn't have to be restricted to one particular medium, so you can enjoy it in whatever format that you choose to, depending on who you're playing with or against. Video games, it still be very much part of my life. I'm now a partner in a venture capital fund called Hero Capital, and we're helping scale up the next generation of successful video games companies. And at the same time, I've written a book, a Final Fantasy game book, to celebrate what is this year the 40th anniversary of the Warlock of Firetop Mountain. And that's called Shadow of the Giants, and it's also coming out in September. And I wish I could have been at UK Games Expo this year. I was supposed to be going, but I am ancient now, and I've recently had a hip replacement, so I didn't want to kind of limping around the halls of Birmingham. So when I'm fully mobile, I'll be back certainly next year to meet all the people I really enjoy being with, and also do another live reading of one of my game books with John Robertson, who we do a double act of going through the books, and he's an amazing character to do that with. But the games industry, the reason I can't walk away from it, I think it's a pure form of entertainment, but the people in it are so great. It's not ego-driven like so many entertainment industries. We don't have celebrity as such. Nobody's recognized from TV or film or from rock stars. The people in it tend to be very good and helpful and collaborative. And it's such an incredible creative powerhouse, and we're so good at it in this country. And it's a great success story, and I think that more should be said about what an incredible industry this is in the UK.
So in the venture capital side, when you're looking at new companies and you're looking for particular games, what are the key things that you look for when they're pitching to you or they're presenting something to you? What are the key kind of hooks you're looking for that's going to get you excited and potentially lead to an investment?
It depends at the stage they're at, basically. As an angel investor, it's a lot more risky. Now, I've made plenty of angel investments, and so, as you pointed out, Playdemic and Mediatonic were two of my very successful outcomes. Hero Capital invests at Series A and Series B, and that means it's kind of between 1 and 3 million euros at Series A and 3 to 7 million euros at Series B, kind of scaling up existing businesses, or perhaps a startup with a team of veterans. So on the angel side, what I looked for more than anything, clearly the game has to be great. From people ask me what are the 3 most important things about a game, I will say gameplay. Technology and graphics are vital, but they play a supporting role. People buy games to have fun, and it's enhanced by technology and graphics. It's not the main thing. So the gameplay obviously has to get me over the line with what that might be. But in terms of how I look at teams, I'm looking for fundamentally, this is a people business. You're investing in people. So the senior leadership team has to be an equal partnership between the creative director and managing director, if you want to put it into those kind of terms. where they both empower each other. That's so often the case is that a lot of creative people don't want to let go of the running of the company, and they shouldn't be doing what they can't do or shouldn't be doing. They should be focusing on making great content, not worrying about whether they should be ordering toilet rolls or doing VAT returns or ordering furniture. So find someone who's going to allow you to be good at what you actually should be doing. At the same time, you're not giving up control of the company, you're just giving up the running of the company. And that shouldn't be a problem, unless, and this has happened, it often happens, and it's happened in the past, that the finance director suddenly has an opinion on your game. Then you're doomed, because they want to make a game that was popular a year ago rather than what might be popular next year. So never give up creative control, but empower each other to be successful. So that senior leadership team have to work in tandem to be successful. And then there's a whole raft of other things I look for about intellectual property. Is it a work for hire company, or they're owning their own IP? Technology, what do they own? Do they understand data in games and know how to acquire, retain, and monetize users? If it's a free-to-play game, do they understand games as a service? Do they understand the total addressable market? What skin they got in the game? I like to see people who've personally invested, not just their time, because anyone can invest time, but they invested actual money, and not as a loan, but as equity. So we're aligned on the money in the business. I like to see people having suffered a little bit. When we started Games Workshop off, we lived in a van for 3 months, and that wasn't okay. It wasn't great fun, but we were motivated by a passion to be successful. It didn't mind what it took to get there. There's kind of a mood in the moment where people can rock up with their PowerPoint and say, well, we're looking for 5 million, a valuation of 20 million. And you can still kind of cut through all that. They haven't really got much to justify it. So I'm not looking for a profit and loss account as an angel investor. I mean, that's kind of meaningless if it's pre-revenue. Projections are still projections. But I want some skin in the game. I want to see that you really enjoy making games, and that you're able to scale up a business. Often, it depends again on your motivation. If you want to just have a lifestyle business with no ambition to scale it, that's fine, but you're going to struggle to get investment, equity investment, because chances are you never want to exit. So you might have to let go for borrowing. So, but when it gets to the VC stage, there's going to be a lot more deeper drilling into some of the points I've said earlier, which is kind of more light touch.
The infamous white van. I believe you're referring to the infamous white van.
No, it wasn't white. It was blue. It was called
blue.
It was called Van Morrison.
Of course it was.
There is a lot of people in the audience who are just finishing university or finished an incubator, or they're at various stages of early in the career, and especially that some of them are seeking jobs at bigger companies, and some of them want to start their own. Obviously, you lived through a very different period, but you have a unique perspective on this. Is there any kind of advice you would give for people who are starting out, let it be, again, joining a company or starting their own?
Yeah, there's lots of things I could say to that. I mean, the first thing is don't be afraid of failure. Failure is just success, work in progress. The key is to, when you're starting out, is probably to work for somebody else, learn other people's costs and build up the skill set to a point where you think you are able to go out on your own, or try and do both, or maybe if you start your own company, make sure you do a lot of work for hire projects and squirrel away enough money to be able to do a side project of your own, to self-publish, because as soon as you start self-publishing, you learn so much, and it gives you such an amazing feeling, even if you don't do particularly well out of it. And you will learn so much that you'll be able to iterate and move on and ultimately make a hit title. I mean, remember, Angry Birds wasn't Rovio's first game, it was their 51st game. And it was an iterative process until they finally did well. But so learn your craft and go for it, and don't be afraid of failure is always my number one recommendation.
So what, as you're looking at the industry now, we're seeing, you know, some really interesting developments in terms of massive buyouts, you know, at huge amounts of money. How do you reflect on that at the moment, and where you're seeing the industry maturing, how it sits alongside other forms of media and how they've matured, and what most excites you about the industry as it's kind of evolving right now?
Well, I think the most important thing is now become a mass market entertainment industry. $200 billion a year in revenues, 3 billion people playing it, increasing every week, and you've seen how the industry has now attracted all the big media and tech giants into the space, from Netflix to Google to, as well as the incumbents with Sony and Microsoft. Yeah, no one can afford to miss out on video games. Why is that? Well, interactive entertainment speaks to Generation Z. They naturally interact with everything they do through prolific use of social media. Guess what? They want entertainment to be interactive because it gives them agency and fun. Plus, with the worlds that we're building now, it's not just about a matter of playing together, it's actually hanging out together, it's transacting together. Blockchain, crypto, transactions, and we're building these kind of metaverses. In fact, that's what Hero Capital was named after, hero protagonist, the hero of Snow Crash, Neil Stephenson's book, because we can see how these worlds are super, super attractive. And you can see even Facebook changing their name to Meta, saying that these digital worlds where kind of merging kind of physical and the digital together are becoming more and more attractive to everybody. So games are now, I've moved from this kind of single player experience not that many years ago to these community-driven digital spaces where you can be with friends, you can create content, they're persistent worlds, they're massively social, they're streaming, and then they kind of speak to human values, an avatar is your identity, and MMO is effectively the community, and user-generated content is effectively making, and we all like making. So you put all those together, and these are game worlds, and it's no surprise that this industry is booming, and some of the biggest deals anywhere in the world now are in this space. Microsoft recent acquisition of Activision Blizzard for some $70 billion. You're seeing it everywhere that the size and scale of the games industry has really become, finally a phenomenon that has always been under-recognized. And in this country in particular, we've always punched above our weight in creating content, but always been underserved by capital. It's been crazy, but it annoys me that this industry is not taken seriously enough. I mean, Grand Theft Auto 5, when it was launched in 2013, generated $1 billion in revenue in its first 3 days, but the headlines were mainly about the content, rather than being a creative, technical, and interactive, genius piece of technology and entertainment. And therefore that sends out kind of negative sentiment to the investment community, to parents who are thinking about their children should be playing or certainly not have a career in this space. And yet we all know that it is the largest entertainment industry in the world, so let's embrace it. And we're seeing how the content is changing through diversity and inclusion and finding new audiences, and that this industry is becoming, more wonderful than ever. I'm getting a bit carried away with singing its praises, but I genuinely believe this is the best entertainment industry in the world.
I do occasionally think that when BBC Breakfast comments on video games, I might have got a more modern answer from my grandmother around the video games industry. So the book is due out. When is the book due for release, and where can people buy it again?
It depends which one you're talking about. I've got.
Well, of course. Pick one.
I've got The Dice Men coming out. This is the history, kind of origin story Games Workshop, early September, as is Shadow of the Giants, my latest Final Fantasy game book, which is going to be out at the end of August. The 27th of August is going to be the 4th anniversary of Warlock of Fire Tom Mountain, and I'm delighted that it survived the test of time. I guess now, branching narrative speaks even more to Generation Z.
Yeah, and I mean, I spent some time working, of course, on branching narrative at Supermassive, which is a child of the work that you were doing. How do you? I know we're coming towards the end of the chat, but how do you plan through your design for that? So when you're working on a book, do you have a through line and then work out how it branches from there, or what's your process for that?
I've never changed in the 40 years I've been doing it. I don't use any software, I don't use Twine or anything like that. I have an idea in my head for the plot, an overarching storyline, and then write it a little bit like writing a computer flowchart. And in fact, this is kind of a typical, that's a sheet from the new book about how I just write it. So it's splits, I allocate 2 numbers, keep little notes about what happens at each one, and then back and two. So if later on in the adventure I need a key to open the door, I have to go back to early parts of the adventure, put a key in a place where the reader might find it. And then loads of little tricks and traps to lure people to their doom wherever I can, because that gives me a huge enjoyment knowing they're going to make their own choice and end up on poison spikes. That's where I get my enjoyment out of writing Final Fantasy game books. But it is an absolute nightmare. Anyone who try this must know the complexities of writing multiple storylines at once, having to balance the storyline, having to balance the economy, having to balance the difficulty, make sure that there's a one true way that's actually possible, that you don't run out of gold pieces, or you can't survive the power of the two powerful monsters might defeat you, and it's statistically impossible to get through. So, but it's a great way that I entertain myself. I really enjoy coming up with little tricks and traps to confuse the reader and make sure they want to go back and try it over and over again.
I need you to settle an argument we had with someone. If you see someone playing one of your games and you see them using multiple, sorry, there's a bit of a background noise, multiple finger bookmarks in your book, do you think they're cheating, or are you excited about how passionate they are about your book?
Well, I call it the 5-finger bookmark, and it's perfectly fine with me. It's like peeking around the corner. If that's what you want to do, go for it. It doesn't worry me whatsoever. As long as you enjoy the experience and you can live with yourself for having heated inverted commas, that's fine with me.
So I'm almost tempted to offer a prize to anybody who can guess the eBay value of your collection in your background there, which must be considerable. It's an amazing backdrop to the discussion.
Well, there are the collection of board games, but there's also a mint set of Final Fantasy game books from the very first one. So that's probably quite valuable. And also, talking about valuable, here is a 1975 Dragons in its original shrink wrap.
That's an original?
Yeah, that's it. Still in its cellophane.
Sorry, where do you live again?
Oh my God.
That's amazing. If you rattle it, does it have the dice inside? As it does.
There was no dice in the early days.
Oh, there were no dice. Yeah, okay.
Just the books.
Incredible.
I would have them framed on my wall.
Yeah.
Look, he just casually puts it down.
So
like it's
casual.
nothing.
So casual. So casual makes me sick. So casual.
I also used to buy the art from the book covers. And Ian McCaig, I mean, you know, I've got all this kind of artwork from the early Final Fantasy game.
That's a classic.
Yeah, and he also did the cover of my City of Thieves book. And he went on to create Darth Maul for George Lucas, and you can see Zambar Bone.
Yeah.
That's true.
I would say he and Darth Maul are distant cousins.
No doubt. No doubt. They have the same expression.
Same spike cranium.
Sir Ian, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it with us. It's amazing to have you here as our keynote guest for the day, and I hope we can meet up again soon and share a drink at Develop or UK Games Expo. But I wish you all success with the launch of your new books and your increasing rising star, which has never stopped since the 60s. So thanks so much for spending some time with Imre and myself today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody, and see you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.